Hello everyone, welcome back to another image review session. I've recently been away in the Red Sea and this is the first few images that I've processed from that trip, and also some catch-up images from some previous trips as well. I'm still a long way behind, but hopefully through this summer I'll be able to catch up and I'll have plenty of these to share with you. There's 50 images, so it's going to be a fast one today, otherwise this is going to go on forever. So just a quick look. As always, I'll try and show you the pictures by zooming in on them full screen, but I'll also show you them small so that you can read the EXIF data, particularly if you watch this back on a big iPad or a laptop screen or something and watch it at high def. You should be able to read the shooting information, so I don't get too bogged down on it. This was a black macaque or a crested macaque photo from Tenkoko National Park in Sulawesi that I processed because I needed it for a talk on Sulawesi I gave a month or so ago. And then just a couple more pictures from Misul in Raja Ampat. Just these are the nice hard coral growths in the shallows with the evening light. Shot with the Nikonos 13mm fisheye on the Sony, and another house reef photo of this parrotfish. If you watch these videos, you know I'm a big fan of parrotfish, and this is just a cheeky parrotfish on black portrait that I got to show you. You don't have to get the chance to shoot parrotfish on black, just because they tend to be, you can see them in the middle of the day when it's nice and bright, and this was in the end of the day and it was nice and close, so I could get lots of strobe on it and shoot it on a black background there. There's a few photos from the Reshark project. This is a project that Misul is a partner in. There's other places around, particularly in Raja Ampat, that are doing it as well, where they're getting leopard shark or zebra shark, depending on which you call it. It's the same species. Eggs from public aquariums, because they're quite a common aquarium shark. They mate and lay eggs in the aquariums because they're well fed. They lay quite a lot of eggs. And then the aquariums don't have space to hatch the youngsters. So while they're still in their egg cases, they ship them back to places in the tropics where they aren't those sharks, where those sharks have been fished out by past shark fishing, and allow those areas to hatch the eggs and grow the youngsters on so they get to a decent size, and then release them into the wild. And this is from the Reshark project in Misul. And these are just some shots. So the zebra sharks, when they're born, they come out with the black and white stripes, and then they quite quickly sort of go more beigey and spotty like the adults. These are some, you can see these two similar size, but actually one was already going much beiger than the other. This is some of the growth rates, and if you look up at the top part of this picture, you'll see that the 2-week sharks are just 30 centimeters long, so that's a foot long, for those imperial numbers. If you come up to the top, there's a 7-week-old shark, that's twice that length. So they, in between weeks 2 and week 7, they double in their length, which is really impressive. And if you look at weight, which is much more important from a biological point of view, they're doubling their weight by sort of from week 2 up to week 5 after hatching, and there were no younger ones to see than that, but they're growing and putting weight on incredibly fast, these young sharks, especially being well fed in the aquariums. So they don't need very long after hatching to be ready to be released and get to quite a big size. You can see that it's 2 foot long already, the 7-week-old shark, which is pretty impressive growth rate. Anyway, that's just a brief biological aside. They're not very interesting photos. These are the guys. This is Aggie, who's one of the people working on this project there at the resort, measuring the shark, and you can see they're just measuring it with a tape measure, holding it up against the tape measure, and this one looks like it's coming out in the high 30s, so it's probably a 3-week-old shark, and they measure them once a week. And they measure them under the water. I should probably just say that they're actually holding this shark under the water. You can see his arms are in the water, and they keep the shark in the water and just measure it in the water. Just hold it upside down for a second, and the sharks go into that tonic immobility that you know all about. And there's a picture of Aggie, for those that know him. Right, we now move. There's a couple of pictures from Lembeh before we get to the Red Sea. Just a cute little blue ring swimming. I like this picture. Just a nice smooth background and a pleasing little blue ring bobbing along underwater. A common seahorse, or estuary seahorse, sometimes called, shallow water specialist. This is a female. This was a really big individual, and there was another similarly big male in the area, also yellow. Often just the females are more yellowy, but this was This was a yellow female, but the male was also yellow. And a warty frogfish that I don't think is even worth seeing at full res. I'm not quite sure why I processed that one out. It's not a particularly good picture. But yeah, these are the shot 90mm, 90mm, 90mm. Nothing very interesting technically, I think, in any of those. Right, we now move to the Red Sea. And most of the pictures I've processed so far from the Red Sea are taken with the backscatter hybrid flash, the new flash gun from Backscatter. It's called a hybrid flash because it also is a video light, although it's not a very strong video light, but it is a very strong strobe light. And I've just prioritized processing those pictures out from the Red Sea. I did about a third of my dives in the Red Sea with the Backscatter strobe, and I've just prioritized processing a few pictures out from those dives, really, for our episode of the Underwater Photography Show. To be able to show them. This first picture is taken with the EMWL of an anemone fish, and this is one of those shots where I shoot it blind. So I just put the lens, the focusing unit, which is the first part of it, and then the objective, which is the other end of it, together on the front of the camera. Like that, the image is flipped and upside down, so it's very hard to look through the camera and shoot like this. But with wide angle macro, you don't really need to look at a lot of the pictures. You just make sure the lens is close to the subject and aimed at the subject, and then you trust the autofocus to grab the subject, and there's no issue with the autofocus on this one. Nice and sharp on the eye, and so you trust the autofocus and you zap away and you get your shots. And I like using it like that because I can just go in, do a macro dive, take the EMWL in my pocket, and then when the right subject comes along, I'm ready for the shot. This is probably taken on the same dive. And back with the standard macro lens here, but shooting it wide open, using the sunlight on the surface of the ocean to create these really nice bokeh effects, bokeh blotches behind the subject, and it's just a nice portrait of a white-bellied damselfish with a very pretty use of negative space next to it. Shot the lens very open at 3.2 to create that bokeh effect, and I've got the shutter speed up at a 3/20th to stop that background overexposing in a base ISO. All right, now moving on to the Thistlegorm. This is one of the Bedford OYC trucks, the fuel trucks that are on the Thistlegorm. And this is the one that still has its steering wheel. The other one has a steering wheel in it as well, but it's no longer attached. But they're a nice pair of trucks to shoot. This was just my first dive ever, actually, with the backscatter flashes. Another one from that dive as well. This is just some of the BSA M20 motorbikes. These ones we call the headlight bikes because there's two of them in a row with headlights on, and a lot of them have had the headlights pulled off over the years by divers, and it's nice to see these ones with the headlights still intact. It gives them a bit more character, I think, in the photo. They're actually on the back of a Morris commercial truck. There's actually 4 of them across and then one at the back of each of the Morris commercials. This is an Albion A463 refueling truck. It's an aircraft refueler truck, and this is one in the holds of the Thistlegorm. And in this one, the hybrid flash is being used as the remote strobe inside the cab. So I've got the strobe on a tripod in the cab, aimed up at the windscreen, and then have a strobe sensor that you can probably see in this picture, because I tend not to process them out. There it is there. I don't know if you can see my mouse. I'll move it right to the middle of the screen. So that's the strobe sensor there. That's just hidden away at the back of the picture. The strobe on my camera fires, lights up the nose of the truck, and then that strobe sensor sets off the other strobe, which is at a higher power, to light up inside the cab to create this effect. Same technique, but now with motorbike, and now with 2 of the backscatter hybrid flashes behind the wheels of the motorbike. You can see the strobe triggers again. There's one of the strobe triggers, and the other strobe trigger, I usually put it up here. There it is there. I don't bother to Photoshop these out of the picture. I don't think anyone who's not a photographer would notice them, and I prefer to leave the pictures as shot. There's no need. But maybe I should process them out. This is the next shot. You'll see they're slightly different compositions. This is the next shot in the series, and this one I tried with a very drained color balance, which I rather like, actually. I think it looks a bit more historic and interesting. So this is the same shot, and then this is the vertical. The motorbike obviously lends itself much more to a horizontal composition, but it's useful to have a vertical picture for the sake of publishing. There's many times when maybe on the cover of a magazine, or that the magazine wants to use the picture as a single page. A picture like this is really good. That negative space at the top would be great for a master line of a magazine cover. This is another EMWL grab shot. So again, shot with the EMWL, but shot blind. So I put the EMW on the camera. This lionfish was hunting at dusk, and I just was able to position the EMWL close to the lionfish, and then just let the autofocus take care of getting it in focus, and create this picture of the lionfish coming around this fire coral. It's quite a long exposure, because it was pretty dark when I took this picture, but I like that kind of ghosting texture around the fire coral that the long exposure gives, shooting up towards Snell's window, taken in very, very shallow water, 2-3 meters of water max, probably less. The next shots with the hybrid flash are on the wrecks at Abu Nuhas, and my friend Jenny Stock was modelling in these pictures, which I'm very grateful for. And she wanted to pose for 2 dives, so we did some shots on the Carnatic, which the first 2 are, and then some shots on the Janice D. So this is on the Carnatic, swimming out of that characteristic front section, swimming through some of the glassfish schools on the Carnatic, and this is now on the Janice D. This is the mooring line. This is the mast on the bow of the Janice D. It's always covered in lovely soft corals, and so I've just lit the soft corals up, and then you can see backwards down the mast, and in the very far background there's the actual hull of the bow. This is on that same mast, but a little bit closer into the bow, so you can see the bow a little bit more clearly in this picture, and Jenny looking at these fire corals and Antheus on the top there. The settings for these, they'll all be f13, I'm sure, knowing me. And they're all ISO 400, so a very boring morning of shooting everything on the same aperture and the same ISO, and just varying the shutter speed as it's needed, which is pretty much the way I operate as an underwater photographer when I'm shooting wide angle. This is a black and white shot on the same dive. I quickly switched my picture mode over to black and white and changed my viewfinder to be on settings effect on, and then that makes the viewfinder black and white, and it made it very easy to shoot nice black and white compositions of Jenny swimming around that same structure again. So that was the mast coming out of the bow that we were taking pictures of before, and I've just now swum away from the scene to shoot it as black and white. Now into the stern section of the Janice D, and there was a lot of glassfish, particularly young glassfish, in the engine room this year on the Janice D. And it was a surprise to us. We would have gone there quicker on the dive had we known they were there, but we spent a long time messing around at the bow. And then when we swam down to the stern end, we found by going inside the engine room, it was packed with fish and made for very nice photos. And this is one of many shots I shot of Jenny and I swimming towards each other through the school of fish. And as the schools of fish began to open, so we shot the pictures to create this kind of window through the school. And obviously you try and time the shots so you don't get a fish right across her face, but you want the fish all packed around the model, so you end up shooting a lot of frames and binning a lot of really lovely shots because the fish are in just the wrong places. But of course, when the fish are in the right places, the picture looks great. Then before the next dive, we went for a snorkel. Jenny had actually got this very fancy skin suit from a company that makes fancy skin suits, and she wanted a couple of photos with it, so we went for a snorkel over a shallow reef just to take some pictures. The problem with this strategy was that there was actually quite a strong current, and I decided that it would look better if Jenny wasn't wearing her horrible boots and dive fins, and she just went in bare feet. But the fact that I had a big camera and I was snorkeling, and she had no fins and we were snorkeling, made this shoot very, very difficult. And I wish I'd done these shots in much more sheltered water, because it would have taken us about 1 minute to get them instead of about half an hour of lots of swimming and very little photography. But we did get some nice shots of her in the wetsuit. So that's those ones there. And then actually on that dive, I kept the hybrid flashes on for that next dive and just did a little bit of macro with them. And these are with the vortex filter, just a screw-on filter on the front of the camera to create this kind of swirly effect around the subject. I only used it for about 5-10 minutes in the dive, But I think it's still a new enough technique that I wanted to process the pictures out. I did get much nicer standard shots than these, but they weren't as interesting to process out straight away. But I do need to get those processed out. Right, then back to the Janus D, but this time with a rectilinear lens, so the 17 to 28 Tamron. And this is a photo of the glassfish inside the beam room. It was really silty in there, so it's not the cleanest shot, this. But it was very cool to have the fish in front of the line of beams that come out of the portholes in that room. Really cool to see. And with the rectilinear lens, I think it actually gave quite a nice compression on the beams rather than the fisheye. So yeah, it wasn't a perfectly timed dive. This was on the first day of my second workshop, and we were rushing to get there as early as we could in the day. But we were a little bit late for the beams, but very well timed for doing the classic stern shots of the Janus D, which I've not bothered to process out because I have a million of them. Back onto the Carnatic for the afternoon dive. I like to dive the Carnatic either first thing in the morning or as late in the day as possible to get the soft corals out. But on this day, we didn't really have a lot of flexibility, but there was still some reasonable soft corals, and there were lots of lovely glassfish on there, as there often are. But it's the combination of the soft corals, the glassfish, and then the very open skeletal structure of the wreck that makes for such nice pictures. Right, keep the pace up. These are some photos taken on the Abu Nuhas reef, but on the channel dive on the corner of Abu Nuhas. It's not the classic. It's kind of Peter Scoons's corner. I think we should call this corner of Abu Nuhas. It was a favourite spot of his, and it seems an appropriate name. It's a pretty little area of hard coral, a few bommies with anthias and soft coral. There's a big surgeonfish spawn in the dusk there as well, which they swim out to the edge of the reef. But it's a cool area. And there's some, just classic little Red Sea scenery. Very pristine area because no one dives there, so you don't see even a broken tip of any piece of coral or anything like that. So, and there's always pretty good viz there as well. So it's a nice little dive site, and I think I'll make it more of a regular on the workshops just because it's a good way to finish the day. Across to Ras Muhammad. This was one of my favourite sites at Ras Muhammad during the trip. There were lots of Ras Muhammad shots from the first trip as well, but I wasn't always using the hybrid flashes then, so I haven't processed them yet. This is a monster school of giant trevallies. Really, each of these fish is huge. And just zoom in, you can see them. And this school just went on and on and on and on, and each of these fish is a massive fish. So this was incredible to see. They tend to appear when the current's at their fiercest. It's hard to get in and amongst them. They're often quite deep. But it's spectacular if you do get the chance to get in and amongst them. And then probably while I was getting my breath back, this is me up in the shallows, just taking some pictures of some nice, easy hard corals, which are a good break after the giant trevallies, and some pretty little scenes of anthias swarming over fire corals here in the shallows. A school of snapper streaming in the current next to the reef, and anthias again in the current with soft corals. And fire corals again. Very, very vibrant Red Sea, colourful reef scene there. Okay, making pretty good progress. These are the turbinaria, the sort of lettuce or cabbage corals that people often call them. These are the ones off the back of the satellite reef, or Little Yolanda Reef, it's also known as. Very, very pretty corals. They are just beginning to die in one area here. Look, you can see. And I hope that doesn't mean that they've reached their maximum size and that's going to be the end of them, because they are a very unusually large growth, and particularly the way they have grown. I hope that's just that will recover that little bit, because they are a really lovely spot and very nice to get to and very nice to photograph area. This was an encounter with that big school of giant trevally, but actually on the reef. And I think it gives you an impression of how big each of those individual fish is when you see the corals behind them. They're really monstrous, and this school was just swirling all around me. What's quite interesting about this school is that if you swim fast, you attract them to you. So to get this photo, what I'd done is I'd seen the school out in the blue, and the current was ripping, and I wasn't going to go out in the blue because I'd get swept away. So I just swam really fast up and down the reef where I was, and that got their curiosity, and the whole of this group swished over to me, spun around me, and then went back out into the blue. And while they were spinning around me, I was able to get this photo. This is one of the carriers. These are from the 7 or 8 day war between Israel and Egypt, when just before Sinai was handed over from Israel to Egypt, and after that war, these were pushed into the water, and there's a whole pile of them just underneath the cliffs near Sharm el Sheikh, and we never dive there. Because it's a very dead part of the reef. It's a backwater. There's not really any life there at all. It's surprisingly, there's so much vibrant colour and life in the Red Sea, and just this little bay has almost nothing in it. But I wanted to go and have a look at them again because I hadn't dived there for more than 10 years, or at least 10 years, and just wanted to go and check them out. And I've got some plans to go back there when I'm running a trip later in the year. And that's Ahmed Almoush, our guide, with them. Then these are on the same evening. We came back to the boat, and I just did a dust dive with a macro lens and shot a few silhouettes. I like these silhouettes. This is a pair of Red Sea bannerfish, and there's a parrotfish as well. Just simple little silhouettes of the fish against the surface. And then I noticed that there was this kind of fish migration route along the mini wall there in very shallow water, 2 meters of water maximum, 6 feet of water. And the fish were migrating along the reef to go to bed. So I positioned myself in this little cut in the reef and had all these fish, particularly parrotfish and surgeonfish, just swimming straight over my head all dive. And I just sat there, and there's just this series of shots of me zapping parrotfish as each individual. I'd just take one shot of each one as it came through, and I like this one because I've caught the moment where its pectoral fins are down and it's really swimming, of this male bullethead parrotfish. Back to the thistlegorm. This is just set up shots with the bike for the second group of the workshop. On this one, actually, it was a bit of a pain because after I took this test shot, this flash trigger, no, it's the flash trigger on the back one, this flash trigger here ran out of batteries, which was very annoying, because the whole group was waiting to shoot them. But I managed to rig up the strobe so they'd trigger each other. So this is this is before it ran out of batteries, because I can still see that flash trigger is there. But some of the later shots from this dive, the flash trigger is gone because the two strobes were triggering off each other. I actually pulled the cable round and pointed the end of the cable at the other strobe, and that's one of the things I really liked about the HF, the backscatter hybrid flashes, is that they did trigger very easily and very reliably, which was really good. And then I think the final picture I've processed so far is just this portrait of a wrasse cruising over the reef, just a shallow depth of field shot at f4.5, little portrait there with the swimming over a piece of Pusillipora, and just a pretty little portrait of a fish that you don't often see photographed. So hopefully that was an interesting run through. A variety of my new Red Sea pictures. If you check out the Underwater Photography Show, there's a discussion between me and Matthew about the hybrid flash, and I'm sort of share with him some of my experiences of using it while showing a lot of these same pictures but not really talking about them. We just use them as illustration. So if you have watched that, this is also kind of, you can hear a bit more about the photos and see the settings and that sort of thing that I was shooting, which were fairly standard. The strobes are powerful, but they don't rewrite the settings you use. They just make small changes, really. So that's that. Thank you for watching. I'll be back again soon when I've processed more pictures.